Here we are. You guys made it all the way through October, which by now you know that we've been taking a look at films that are Halloween themed or take place during Halloween. We've made a few stutter steps along the way, but this week we're taking a look at Trick or Treat, released in 2007 and written and directed by Michael Dougherty and produced by Bryan Singer. There are not many actual Halloween movies. Yeah, there's a Halloween franchise and a lot have certain elements of Halloween or take place on Halloween, but not many encompass Halloween. While I love the original Halloween, it's just a slasher flick that you can substitute any holiday with. The closest we got from them is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which I covered a couple weeks ago, but everybody cried like a little bitch because there was no Michael Myers. Trick or Treat tells 4 stories that take place on Halloween night. Each story has a common element. Sam, a mysterious trick-or-treater wearing shabby orange footy pajamas with a burlap sack over his head. Sam appears in each story when someone breaks a Halloween tradition. Sam was first introduced in Dougherty's 1996 animated short, Season's Greetings. In the film, Sam is out trick-or-treating as he's being stalked by a stranger. Needless to say that things don't work out too well for the stranger. This film jumps around quite a bit, so I'll try to keep the individual stories contained. Heavy spoilers follow, so you've been warned. A young couple arrives home after a night of heavy drinking. Emma stops to blow out a pumpkin. Henry states it's against Halloween tradition to do so before midnight. She blows him off and the pumpkin out. Henry goes upstairs to get ready for a little sexy time, but passes out. Meanwhile, Emma starts tearing down all the Halloween decorations when she is attacked and murdered by something or someone. Henry wakes up later and tries to find Emma. He finds her mutilated body on display with the decorations she tried to take down just hours earlier. We then cut to this piece of shit kid named Charlie. He's walking the streets, smashing pumpkins, stealing candy. When he tries to steal some candy from an unattended bowl, he's caught by the school principal, Stephen Wilkins. Charlie sits with his principal having a discussion. Mr. Wilkins offers him a candy bar and tells him how he used to be just like Charlie when he was a kid, but it was his father who set him straight and taught him the traditions of Halloween, like respecting the dead, because this is the one night the dead and other things can roam free. Charlie starts to cough and vomits blood when Steve says that he forgot the main Halloween tradition: always check your candy. When dealing with the body, Steve is interrupted by trick-or-treaters, including Sam, who grabs a candy bar and walks away. Steve is now trying to bury Charlie along with the body of another boy when he keeps getting interrupted by his son or his next-door neighbor's dog. His neighbor, an angry old recluse, Mr. Krieg, hears a commotion outside and goes to investigate. Steve tells him it's problems with his septic when one of the boys awakens, and Steve tries to put him down quietly. This part here has a very situational comedy feel to it, especially Home Improvement, with him talking to the neighbor through the fence. Steve, all done, returns to the house to help his son carve a jack-o'-lantern, sees his neighbor Mr. Krieg yelling for help. He ignores him and goes back inside. Him and Billy go downstairs to carve a jack-o'-lantern, and it turns out they're carving Charlie's head. 4 trick-or-treaters, 3 of which we saw earlier at Steve's, are collecting pumpkins. They then meet up with Rhonda, a savant and Halloween expert. Rhonda and the 4 kids are walking to a local stone quarry. Rhonda is talking about the true history of Halloween, Samhain, and how some traditions included human sacrifices. Macy then tells the story of the Halloween school massacre, which claimed the lives of 8 children with disabilities in a school bus on Halloween. The driver, who had been paid by their worn-out parents, drove them to that place to kill them. I can only assume with poison candy since we've already seen that tonight. One of them broke free and attempted to escape and drive away, but instead wound up driving the bus over the edge with the children chained up inside. The children all died and the driver was never seen again. Macy tells them they are leaving 8 pumpkins as a tribute to the 8 kids who died. Macy and 2 of the other kids take the elevator down. It can only fit 3 safely, leaving Rhonda and Chip back at the top. Rhonda and Chip take the elevator down to the bottom of the quarry. On their way down, they hear screams from the 3 who went down earlier. Rhonda goes to investigate, but Chip stays at the elevator frightened. The 4 kids dressed up like the kids who died to scare her. When they go to clean up after their prank, Macy kicks one of the pumpkins into the water. Well, that pisses off the dead kids who come back and they're not too happy. They kill one of the girls and the remaining 3 run back to the elevator. Rhonda, who heard the screams and got scared again, hides inside the elevator. When they get back to the elevator, they beg for Rhonda to let them in. Rhonda just takes the elevator up and leaves them to their own fate, which isn't long considering the screams and sounds of ripping flesh we hear from the quarry. As Rhonda walks away, she sees Sam, and they both give each other a glance of respect. Earlier in the night, we catch a kid spying on 4 girls in a changing room, putting on their costumes for the night. The girls then state, according to tradition, they need to find their dates. As they're paying for their costumes, Danielle flirts with the cashier and asks him to go to a party with her later tonight. The girls are talking and joking about Lori still being a virgin. Lori states that she's an old-fashioned girl and wants her first time to be special. They tell her to loosen up and play hard to get. Maria and Janet pick up 2 guys for the party. Lori tells them that she'll meet up with them later at the party. Right now she wants to check out the town's festivities. Later that night, Lori is walking down a dark road by herself to the party, when she's confronted by a vampire stalker. He attacks her and takes a bite into her neck. Back at the party, we see a red-hooded figure fall from the trees and slam to the ground. Danielle approaches thinking something happened to her sister, but under the hood is the vampire stalker. Lori comes out of the woods. She tells her sisters it took her longer than she thought to find somebody. We see that the vampire is no vampire at all. It's Principal Wilkins. Lori tells them this is her first time, and the girls all transform into werewolves and consume their dates. Sam sits on a log and watches the feast. Some kids are out trick-or-treating and stop at Mr. Krieg's house. He uses his dog to scare them off. This part here is like a Ebenezer Scrooge Halloween story. As he sits down to watch some TV, he gets annoyed by all the Halloween shows on. Hearing something from outside, he looks out the window, only to see his windows getting egged by somebody. Grabbing a baseball bat and going outside to get his dog Spike, we see the conversation that he had with the neighbor from before. Once back inside, his dog draws his attention to the front of the house, where we find his lawn is filled with dozens of jack-o'-lanterns. Now being drawn upstairs, he finds written in blood the words to the trick-or-treat song. Sam cuts his heel from under the bed, using the razor blade candy bar he got from Wilkins' house earlier. He and Sam get into a lengthy brawl, with Sam constantly having the upper hand. This is where we finally see Sam's face. Sam moves in to put the finishing move on him and stabs a candy bar that fell into his lap. Happy that the handing out candy tradition was honored, he spares Mr. Krieg. As Sam leaves, he turns back around and gives Mr. Krieg a final look of warning. Burning in the fireplace, we see that Mr. Krieg was the bus driver that took the kids out to be killed that day. Later that evening, we see Mr. Krieg handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. He looks up and down the street. Next door, we see Billy handing out candy, wearing a costume that resembles his dad. Rhonda is pulling a wagon with a jack-o'-lantern in it. It seems she's still shooken up from what happened earlier. She blindly crosses the road and is almost hit by Lori and her friends driving down the street. Sam is standing there watching Mr. Krieg until his attention is pulled to the young couple as she blows out the jack-o'-lantern. Sam leaves to exact punishment. Mr. Krieg returns inside only to hear the door knock again. He opens the door to see the 8 kids resurrected there to exact their revenge. There you have it, Trick or Treat. Just a great anthology-style movie about a small town where anything can and probably will happen on this crazy night, especially to kids. This movie is not afraid to kill off a kid or 5. One theme that stayed in the writing of this film was the different stages of a person's life and their experience with Halloween. You first got the introduction to Halloween by your parents, or in this case, serial killer father. Another is the first time roaming with your friends without your parents. Then it's in your 20s when it's all about sex. Finally, then Halloween in your twilight years. This film does a great job of portraying the times in our life that we try to recapture each year, even well into adulthood. It's a crime this movie did not get a wide theatrical release. It was only released direct to video, and the only reason I discovered it was because I found it in a cheap Walmart bin. One thing you gotta love about this film is the look. Just look at the downtown decorations and all the pumpkins set up. This is a type of town I want to live in during Halloween. They go all out. This one is truly Halloween Town.